Familiar highways lined with leaves turn brown, making my way back into my hometown. Funny how this all looks different, but it feels the same. Like how life never stops changing, but some things never change. So fill your plate and fill your drink, and fill this house with family, the kind of love that all these years can't wash away. 'Cause the older that I get, I see that life is short and bittersweet. Thank God for this Thanksgiving Day. Watching football, watching families grow. The old kids' table all have kids of their own. Starting to see my grandfather in my nephew's eyes. Mom still can't talk about him, and I'd almost cry. So fill your plate and fill your drink, and fill this house with family, the kind of love 1,000 miles can't wash away. 'Cause the older that I get, I see that life is short and bittersweet. Thank God for this Thanksgiving Day. So fill your plate and fill your drink, put your dishes in the kitchen sink, and let the leftover year just wash away. 'Cause we made it through, I do believe, the longest year in history. Thank God that it's Thanksgiving Day.
Good morning. Welcome to Columbine Spiritual Center, where we inspire personal transformation. We're coming to you here from Columbine, and we have Robert Anderson with us. Yay! We've got some people here in the sanctuary, which just feels incredible and special, and it's so good to start bringing people back home to Columbine. So let's sing some songs, Robert.
So you're invited to sing along with Rachel and I on the chorus to this song. It goes, Spirit is talking through me.
What a concept.
Go like this. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me. It's talking through the toddler on her mama's knee. It's talking through the Brahmin with his chakras free. It's talking through the Dalai Lama sipping tea. And I know Spirit is talking, talking through me. Here we go. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me. It's talking through the robin in the redwood tree. It's talking through the dolphin in the deep blue sea. It's talking through the crocodile, the honeybee. And I know Spirit is talking, talking through me. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me. It's talking about amazing grace and harmony. It's talking about unshaken faith and clarity. It's talking about a special love that makes us free. And I know Spirit is talking, talking through me. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me. Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, Spirit is talking, talking through me.
Always so good to hear you sing. Always so good. Let's do another one. I know, let's have more music.
This was a request, this song. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the
Good morning. So good to have people here in the sanctuary. We're going to light our Christ candle. Invite you at home to light a candle yourselves, to make this a sacred time. To come to that place of knowing that we are in this place where God is, because God is always here. I invite you to take a deep cleansing breath. Gently close your eyes if you're comfortable, and let's pray together. Sweet loving Spirit, we are in this place that God is because God is within us and around us and always present. No matter what may be showing up in our lives, we know that God is here. God is us. God is. And so we are grateful for this moment of awareness of this divine essence that we all have within us. For as long as we can hold on to that knowing that we are it, we are that spirit that longs to come forth and express through us as us. Express as love, express as peace, express as joy, and express as whatever is showing up for us in our lives. Accepting that in our humanness, not everything that shows up within us feels like love or peace or joy. And so we hold that too, knowing that God is there. God is here. Spirit is us. We hold on to that awareness. We bring it to everyone who is challenged right now with health challenges or challenges due to the pandemic or mental health challenges, racial injustice challenges, any challenges, inequalities that we may be facing in our lives. We hold on to this knowing that Spirit is here. Grateful for this awareness, and grateful for our many blessings. We thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.
Yeah, well, you might be saved, you might be reborn, you might own a car with a big loud horn, might be the news on your television, or it might be God trying to get your attention. Are you an engineer or working on the farm, or a Casanova with a whole lot of charm? Might be a mouse living in your kitchen, or it might be God trying to get your attention. Well, it might sound bad, might sound good, might be made of steel, might be made of wood, might be the news on your television, or it might be God trying to get your attention. Well, it might be in the church house, or it might be on the street. One way or another, every soul has got to meet. Might be in the city, might be in the town. One way or another, you're gonna find the high ground. Well, you might be deaf, you might be blind. She'll put the message right there in your mind. Might look like a plan or a coalition, or it might be God trying to get your attention. Well, it might be in the church house, or it might be on the street. one way or another, every soul has got to meet. Might be in the city, might be in the town. One way or another, gonna find the higher ground. Well, you might be deaf, you might be dumb. You'll get the answer when the answer comes. Might be the news on your television, or it might be God trying to get your attention. Yes, it might be God trying to get your attention. Listen to the birds, listen to the trees, listen to the river, listen to the sea, listen to the mountain, listen to the land, listen to the woman, listen to the man, listen to the rain, listen to the wind, listen with your mind, and listen all over again. Listen to the river, listen all over again. Listen to the river, listen all over again.
Thanks, Robert. Great to have you back here again. I get the distinct privilege of introducing our guest speaker. He was the last guest speaker we had live before the pandemic and we had to close the building, and now he's the first guest speaker we have live now that we're starting to open things up again. I'm really excited to have him here. Reverend Masando Mike Hiroko. I probably didn't say that right. He received his bachelor's degree in religious studies from the University of Colorado Boulder in 2004, and was introduced to his formal meditation practice during his travels abroad to India through Naropa's University Buddhist Studies program. He has a monthly column, The Art of Being Human, in the Science of Mind magazine, is serving as the chair of CSL's Spiritually Motivated Social Engagement Committee, and is currently an assistant minister at Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado, in charge of the Social Uplift Mystery. So please help me welcome Reverend Masando.
What's up, everybody? It's so great to see actual human beings. Yeah, it is crazy to think about the last time I was here. I think it was like even the week before everything went virtual. Like, I remember it was all, this whole coronavirus thing was just starting to happen. We were still like giving elbows. We were still like giving hugs in the lobby. Like, before we knew what was going on, we were still figuring it out. And it feels like this is kind of on the other end of that. Now, people are getting vaccinated. I'm really, really grateful that my wife and I were able to get 2 shots. So as of just a few days ago, we're fully vaccinated. So yeah, now I've given a few hugs to friends who are also vaccinated, and it's just like this crazy, amazing thing that's going on again. So so good to have some human beings in the room. Thank you for having me back, and thanks for all of you that are tuning in online. I think the talk I gave last time was about this metaphor of being totally crushed by a wave and being sort of tumbled around, not knowing which way is up, and feeling this need to allow our natural buoyancy to bring us back to the surface, and the trust that requires, just to surrender to this natural wisdom that we hold within to bring us back to the surface. And gosh, that feels still like what's going on. Wave after wave of this pandemic has been hitting us in this past year, and now we're finally raising back to the surface. We're taking a look around okay, are we good? And it's just amazing to be back and to starting to be together again. So just really grateful to have this opportunity to be with you all today. So, which brings us to the talk title for today. This too is God. And I think I put like a question mark and an exclamation point behind that sometimes, like this too is God. You know, in this unity teaching, we have a very amazing view of God that holds that, you know, God is a part of everyone and everything. I think the music that was played today, I think that amazing prayer by Reverend Sue really showed that. But, you know, perhaps for some of us, for a lot of us, you know, we grew up with a different view of God. Perhaps our understanding of God was something that was really told to us and given to us by the church, right? Perhaps by a traditional Christian upbringing. Perhaps that very specific picture of God was sometimes loving and forgiving, but you know, oftentimes like ready to punish you and you know, ready at any moment to just, you know, doom you to a life of fire and brimstone in the afterlife. Perhaps this God was seen as really far outside of you. Perhaps, you know, like that Sistine Chapel God that's, you know, sitting on the clouds in the sky with a dude with a big white beard, just kind of, you know, waiting for us to make a mistake. Or perhaps our view of God was one that was just like maybe still this Christian view, but very loving and always with us. I think this is part of the spiritual path, this seeking to figure out what is God to us. And I think it's amazing to come to a place like unity, where this thing we call God isn't necessarily only this sort of anthropomorphized version of God as a person, but more like this subtle energy, this feeling within that shows up right here at the center of our being, that is not necessarily only outside of us, but just like right here within us. The co-founder of Unity, Myrtle Fillmore, her definition of God is really beautiful and profound, and I just want to share that with you. What she says is, God is the one perfect life flowing through us. God is the one pure substance out of which our organism is formed. God is the power that gives us motive power, the strength that holds us upright and allows us to exercise our members, the wisdom that gives us intelligence in every cell of our organism, every thought of our minds. God is the only reality of us, all else but a shadow that is cast by some foolish belief or unwise combination of thoughts and elements of being. When we let light flood us with its sunshine, all clouds vanish, and we begin to see ourselves in new ways of doing, which lead to wholeness and health and satisfaction and growth. I'm guessing some of us came to unity or came to some like new thought, whether that's Centers for Spiritual Living or unity, and found this new idea of God, right? Like, wow, like God is this one life flowing through me. Like this too is God. Like God is that feeling I get when I'm feeling motivated and I can do something and I feel that energy within me to pursue something new. Like, oh, this too is God. When I feel strength, when I feel that sense of strength within me that's able to hold myself up and walk through a day, maybe even a really hard day, when I feel that resilience within me, like that too is God. This, even just like the simple heartbeat in my chest, that energy that's continually flowing through my body, like this too is God. When I just let light flood in, and I wish you all could see the sun that's just like reflecting off of this beam in the back and into my face right now. feels amazing and beautiful when I let that light actually flood through me and dissipate any clouds or cloudiness I may be feeling. Like this, too, is God. That to me is one of the most amazing things about being human, right? Is that, yes, there have been these traditions throughout time, these faith traditions that have told us about God, but ultimately, none of that matters until we have our own direct experience of God. And it doesn't matter if it's like true to anyone else, but if we have our own experience of it, like that's the truest experience we can have. And when I came to, New Thought teachings, when I came to Unity, when I came to Centers for Spiritual Living, and I began to learn about this particular idea of God that is within me, that like is right here at the center of my being, that never leaves me, that is always expressing through me, that comes to me through all of these emotions, through every experience of my life, like that too is God. I can remember just feeling like, yeah, like this feels right, like this feels true to me, and still to this day, still feels like the truest thing I know this thing that can never ultimately be defined, right? Like we can never fully capture what this thing called God fully is, but I feel like we can inch closer and closer to it. And we allow ourselves just to move from like an actual concept or a story that someone else has given us to an experience, right? Experience that is so deeply personal that somehow like feels like no one could ever take that away because I've found it for myself, right? And somehow that also brought me closer to myself. That late great musical artist, Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince, he said, when one finds himself, one finds God. You find God and you find yourself. And this idea that like our path towards discovering who we are, our path towards discovering why we're here, our path towards discovering the unique gifts that we have to bring to the world, our path in just like really, maybe just falling in love with ourselves, not in some like egotistical way, although I don't mind that too. One of my favorite quotes by Terrell Owens, he said, I love me some me. I love me some me. One of the greatest football players ever. And you could tell, like, he believed it. And that was part of his greatness. He believed in himself so deeply, that he was able to do amazing things in his sport, in his craft. And I think, like, when we start doing this, right, when we begin to, like, claim this thing we call God, not as something anyone else can give us or anyone else can describe for us or anyone else can make into some idea that's not our own. I think we also begin to see the ways that it shows up, not just within us and in our lives, not just in our own person and personality, but we begin to see this out in the world, right? Like that first song and the wind and the breeze. I think growing up in Colorado, just living up here in Boulder, getting to go to school up here, so many of my deepest spiritual experiences were just out in nature. Like amazing going to school at the University of Colorado campus because I lived on the hill and I could just walk out my door and I could just walk towards the Flatirons and in 15 minutes just be in wilderness. And we did that. I mean, we were out in the wilderness every single day, and there were 3 or 4 times a week when we would just go take a hike, even in between classes. And I wasn't, like going to church then. I wasn't really thinking about these things. I was thinking about these things from a very academic standpoint because I was studying religion. But my church was, just being outside, feeling the breeze. My church was just standing in awe of how incredible nature and the beauty that it just arises in me, my church was standing in awe of life and how perfect everything seems to flow when humans don't get in the mix and and start interrupting it. My church was just being in the flow of nature itself. And we would take road trips back when gas was like 80 cents a gallon and road trips were like an actual thing you could still afford to do. And, we would take these road trips throughout the Southwest, and that was my church. And I think when we begin to claim this thing called God as something that isn't necessarily in any building, isn't necessarily a part of any one faith tradition, that yes, these mystics throughout time have asked us to discover within ourselves in every faith tradition, but like that even those two, even the mystics that yearned for their own relationship with the divine, that even their descriptions aren't necessarily the most descriptive for us, because like we have to find it in ourselves. That to me is the journey of the spiritual path. It's why we're here. And that never ends, and it changes, and it's dynamic, right? So one of my mentor ministers, Reverend Karen Pascal, who is now, she's now retired, but she was the former senior minister of New Dawn Center. She was one of the first ministers I was introduced to when I was in my teens. And so she was one that I would, 911 call, you may do that with Scott and Sue sometimes when things are just going crazy and you just need to talk to somebody and you call them up. And she would always be this one that would she'd always chuckle when I answered because she always knew I was going to be in a frenzy. But she would just stop. She'd I'm driving right now, but I want to be very present with you. So she would always just stop and pull over and listen and just be so present with me. And I'm still so grateful to her and for the ways that she did that for me. And the question she always asked me, which is a question that was always confronting and confusing, but she would ask it to me all the time in a few different ways, but she was always so how does God feel to you today? What's God look like to you right now? And, normally I'd just be I don't know, same thing as it did last time you asked me this question. I don't know. But she would always push into it, right? She would always just ask me to really, she's no, really, what does God look like to you right now? How does God feel to you right now? And when I allowed myself to really sit with that and just ask myself that question, I got really honest. Sometimes I would tell her you know what? God feels really, really far away. I know we're all supposed to believe that God is within, but there's nothing within me that feels that right now, right? Many times I felt just abandoned by God. Where did this presence go? I know it's supposed to be here, but I'm not feeling it right now at all. And yes, there would be other times when I asked myself that question where I would get the answer no, God is actually closer than my breath. Right? I can feel the ways that God is operating in my life so much so I don't even have to think about it. I can ask myself that question and the answer comes to me right now. God is within everything and with every aspect of my being, and it's flowing and it's leading and it's guiding. And all I have to do is just take the first step, and I'm just on this path that I don't even have to bring any energy of my own will to. I'm literally walking hand in hand with the divine right now. That has also been true. And there's been other times when I've just felt really tested by God, just going through what feels like trials, just trials and tribulations. Is my faith being tested right now because this person is testing me? Right? I am not feeling it. It's taken everything in me just to be a decent human being right now. I feel really tried by God. I'm angry. I am angry. I'm a little spiteful. I'm a little resentful. And there's been other times when God has appeared as this comfort and this presence that in my dumpster fire of whatever situation I was going through, there's this deeper presence that was letting me know everything was going to be okay. And in every moment, right, like, whatever answer came to me, like, that was the truth. No matter how God was appearing to me in that moment, because that was the experience I was having, like, that too was a part of God, right? And I come to realize that, like, so much of our journey is being just really real, because maybe it's not as important of, like, if my idea of God in that whatever moment is right or correct. But what was more important is, like, when I got real about that, it gave me some insight into what was actually going on, right? Whenever I really asked myself, like, how does God feel to me? And I was able to be honest enough where I could really express that, I always was able to, and I feel like I'm able to have a deeper understanding of where I actually am. And that, to me, is the greatest gift, because it's from that place when I can get to know myself, where I can get to feel into whatever is going on, and then begin to come into a deeper realization of the ways that God can show up, right? As hope, as comfort, as strength, as resilience, as patience, as kindness. Like, the best parts of me begin to show up when I just get real about how I'm feeling about God, right? So this too is God. All of that can be God. And in a year like 2020, going into 2021 now, when so much tragedy hits, and when I feel like an immense amount of grief and loss happened this year, like, I can't even fathom that 3 million humans, 3 million souls that were with us just a year ago are no longer with us. Like, it's unfathomable to even think about that, right? In just a year. It is daunting, and it's when you think about that, like, when you think about that number, you think about the tragedy of this past year, you think about the challenges of this past year, and we even, like, start thinking about God, like, how can this too be God? Like, that's when it can get really challenging. And that's where I find that, like, often, like, one of two things can happen, right? Often, like, when really hard things happen, I can either, one, just throw out the idea of God altogether, right? Which I've done, being like, this is so hard. How can God even exist? Just, like, throw out the baby with the bathwater, like, just gone out the window. I can't even think about this idea of God, and maybe for some people that, like, sticks for a long time, right? Like, something really hard happens, and the idea of God, well, that can't exist anymore, right? Just gone. And then another thing, and I think maybe it's like, especially within these, like, New Thought and Unity communities, another coping mechanism that I feel like happens is, like, we'll do this thing where we just won't look at what's hard, right? We'll just, like, only go to the positive. We'll just be like, everything must happen for a reason, and so I'm only going to think about the positive, and I'm going to positively affirm my way around this. It's what people have come to know as, like, this thing called spiritual bypass, right? Which is, like, this apt image. It's like that you can just, when something hard happens, just like, oh no, I can just, like, cruise right around that. Like, I could just take the bypass around that and just, like, spiritually float my way around anything that's hard and not really acknowledge everything that's going on down there. Because I don't know if you all know, like, but I'm a really spiritual person, so I can levitate. And so I can just, like, levitate my way around this thing. And that's a coping mechanism. But what I found is, like, to be honest, neither one of those coping mechanisms actually ever brings me relief. Neither one of those approaches, or reactions rather, of just throwing out any idea of God when stuff gets hard, or when something happens that we can't explain. or positively affirming and spiritually bypassing around anything that feels challenging or difficult, right? I don't find that either one of those actually brings any relief. But I think there's a third way that has helped me walk through difficult times and times that I just can't explain. And it's really exemplified by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I don't know if you all know this. So Ralph Waldo Emerson, as many of us know, had a really profound impact on American society and was kind of like one of the founders, or just, he was one of those American transcendentalists that really paved the way for new thought. And we all probably know him from when we had to read the essay Self-Reliance in high school at some point. And so I think all of us are familiar with him, have gotten familiar with his work at some point. But you know what I didn't know when I started reading him and studying him when I was in ministerial school is how much loss this guy experienced. Were you aware of how much loss anybody, Ralph Waldo Emerson experienced? I just want to read to you all of the loss that Emerson experienced in his life. It is bananas. So when he was just a little kid, Emerson, his dad, when he was 8 years old, died of stomach cancer. 3 other of his siblings, he had a big family, but 3 other of his siblings died in their childhood. His first wife, Ellen, died of tuberculosis just 2 years after they were married. She was 20 years old. And then a few years later, his younger brother, Edward, died also of TB. And then a couple years after that, one of his other younger brothers died of the same disease. Emerson ended up remarrying. He had a son, Waldo, and when his son was just 2 years old, died of the scarlet fever. And then later in life, his best friend, his buddy, Thoreau, as you all know, he also died of TB. And Thoreau was just like 40 years old at the time, but they had been best friends for 20 years. They were BFF, those two. And then Nathaniel Hawthorne, one of his other really good friends, died just a couple years later. Like, can you all imagine that kind of loss? And you would think, right, like after losing father, son, brother, wife, best friend, like you'd think Emerson would have taken one of those 2 paths. You would think this dude would just be like, God, no, like I'm out, I'm done with this idea of God. But he didn't. Like he ended up becoming one of the deepest spiritual thinkers of our time, to the point like that had this ripple effect on history itself. It brought him closer somehow to the divine, right? And he was the one that really gave us this idea that God exists within everyone and everything, right? Everyone and everything. Emerson was one of the first people to really like bring that to us in our society. And it said like he had this, and this kind of seems morbid, but there's these stories of this practice that he had of a couple times, and this was probably him just like working through his grief, but a couple times, like with his wife and with his son that he lost, long after they had passed, he went and he found their coffin, and he opened that coffin up, and he stared at their corpse. And it sounds morbid and horrible and crazy to think about, but for him it was this deep practice of finding God, discovering beauty, even in the midst of what for him was the hardest thing he's ever had to experience. And he says this in his writings. He says, "There is no object so foul that intense light will not make beautiful. And the stimulus it affords to the sense, and the sort of infinitude which it hath, like space and time, make all matter gay. Even the corpse has its own beauty." Like when I read this, like I can hear him just whispering to himself and whispering to us that like this too is God. I can feel the pain that he feels in that moment and know that there's nothing else to do with it. There's no way to throw it away, and there's no way to bypass it. But for him, if he just sat with whatever was long enough, he was able to shine light on it for an extended period of time, so much so that like, even in what is so hard and so difficult and so painful, like God showed up. Beauty showed up. And it gave him this sense of resilience that I think we all are leaning into right now, right? He tells us to work and learn in evil days, in days of depression and calamity. Find the best in the shade of the cloud and arrows. And he would always say this affirmation. It was one of his favorite affirmations. He says, I am defeated all the time, yet to victory I am born. I am defeated all the time, yet to victory I am born. He's telling us that the powers of our soul and our spirit are able to meet the challenges of life. I want to live with that kind of courage. I want to live with that kind of depth. I want to live with that kind of ability to face and really meet the challenges of life, both our individual challenges and our collective ones. And to do so in a way where I sit with them long enough, especially the things that I can't fully explain, and maybe I won't ever fully be able to explain the reason for. But maybe I don't need to. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the point is just to sit with what is for long enough, that we can find within us this deep experience of the ways in which the divine can show itself and the way that light can enter right there in the midst of it all. So I want to invite us just into some contemplation time and some silence as we really settle into this space that we find ourselves in. So if you're in the room or if you're tuning in online, I just invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable, and just to take a couple deep cleansing breaths. And to continue to breathe and to feel your breath as the very breath of the divine, to feel that strength within you, just the rising and falling of your chest and your belly, to feel the ways in which you are being breathed by the divine. And the divine is breathing with you. And as we just breathe and settle into this moment, I invite you just to ask yourself the question simply, like, what is God to me right now? How does God feel? And to know like that any answer that comes is the perfect one for you. And so also just to trust whatever arises and just to be radically honest with yourself. And to gently just hold whatever comes to you as perfection. If God is love to you, feel that love and how it opens up in your chest, perhaps as a warm sensation. This too is God. If God perhaps is feeling far away, feel the yearning to be close to God. How that yearning opens up something deep within you. This too is God. If you have no idea how to answer this question, if God feels like this big question mark, allow God to be this ineffable mystery. and know that this too is God. And if God is that energy that just emanates through all of life, feel the ways in which that brings you so deeply into communion and connection with yourself and with all of life. This too is God. So let's just take a minute and just be in that prayerful and contemplative and that deep space just with you and the divine.
When I was a boy each week, Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread. Today the only difference is, everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad, miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Everything's a miracle. 'Cause everything is holy now. Sing that. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Miracle. Everything's a miracle. 'Cause everything is holy now. And wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, finding where there isn't one. This morning outside I stood, saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, and now I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Miracle. Everything's a miracle. Everything is holy now. Yes, everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Miracle. Everything's a miracle. Yes, everything is holy now. Everything's a miracle. Everything is holy now.
It's beautiful, Robert. Thank you. And thank you. Yeah. And thank you, Masandro, for that wonderfully inspiring talk. So real. Good for these times. And thank all of you for being here and for you being online. And this is a time in our service where we so gratefully receive your love offerings and tithes. And we couldn't do this work, we couldn't inspire personal transformation and continue in this space without your generosity. So we are so grateful for all that you give to Columbine and to our mission of inspiring personal transformation. So let's say our offertory blessing together. God's love has always met and will always meet all my needs. I give freely, I receive abundantly, and I am grateful. Amen. So a little bit of community news. If you are new with us today or newer to us, we invite you to go to our website. We got a brand new website. We're really excited about it. Go to our website. There's lots of different ways that you can connect with us and get on our email list. So if that's something that you'd like to do, go to our website, columbineunity.org. We'd love to see you there. We had a great time last Saturday, Feet Forward, feeding 75 people who are homeless in Boulder. We got together and made breakfast burritos. It was a lot of fun, and we're going to be doing this every month. So if you would like to participate, there's going to be a link. You can find it on our website to go and sign up on our Breeze software. We need not only people to cook and assemble burritos, but also to provide financial resources to buy the food and then distribute them in Boulder. So if that's something you'd like to do, give of your time and talent in that way in sacred service, we'd appreciate you. And thank you to everyone who helped out last Saturday. We got what's next? Spring program. So we are really excited to be doing something different. We're going to be doing a video series, Daughters of Destiny. You find it on Netflix. It's only 4 weeks. And I want to just spend just a minute or two talking about why we chose this series. This series, on the surface, is about a guy who goes back to India and opens a school for those who live in extreme poverty. And his idea is to help stop the cycle of poverty in India by educating children from 4 years old. Now, deeper than that is what we are always inviting you to do is look at your patterns, look at those cycles in your lives, look at places where you can break wide open to a new way of thinking, a new way of being. Now, many of us don't have the extreme hardship that these people do in Daughters of Destiny. We don't have odds against us like they do. And yet we are invited to look at our belief systems, look at where our patterns are, look at how we can break open, break out of those patterns, live a new way. And it's always inviting us, we're always inviting you into this transformation in your life. And so Daughters of Destiny is really in alignment with what our mission is here at Columbine. Inspiring personal transformation. looking at the potential within each of us, which is far greater than we ever realize, which is what the girls that are featured on Daughters of Destiny are doing, learning to live from their potential. And so we're going to do a small group series on this, just 4 weeks. If this is something that you would like to connect with other people, we've got groups that are meeting on Zoom and also groups that are meeting here on the patio. Please sign up. By Tuesday, we're going to be looking and seeing where we might need to consolidate some of the groups. But if it's something you want to do, please sign up by Tuesday so that we get a feel for how many people are really interested in doing this. It's going to be a wonderful 4-week small group program that you could really get to know and get some support on your journey with others that are in your group. So check it out. Next Sunday is our annual meeting. We still have quite a few people who haven't sent in their annual membership card or filled out that form on Breeze. If you still want to be a voting member here, please fill that out. When we have this week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to send the Zoom link out for the annual meeting as well as the minutes from last year and our financial statements. So please fill out your annual membership form if you haven't done so. Everybody's invited to join us at the meeting. If you're a voting member, only voting members get to vote. Just a reminder of that. And Peace Through Music is coming up. It's our 6th annual. It's going to be on Saturday, June 5th at 6 o'clock. We're going to have it outside this year on the grounds. It'll be a beautiful evening. Plan on joining us. The form is out there. You can find it on our website, on our e-bulletin, and our update. But it's June the 30th on a Saturday evening. So join us. Janice has a full lineup. We're really excited about it. So we are, again, going to be sponsoring Sister Carmen and Musical Ambassadors of Peace. And we have an outdoor service today at 12:30, so if you want to hear some more or hear Reverend Masando's message again or this beautiful music by Robert and Rachel, come on out and join us at 12:30. I think that's it. Yeah, so let's all stand. If you're in the sanctuary, if you're home, you can stand as well, but let's all sing our peace song together.
La, 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 la. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator. Then we all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Have a great week, everybody. We love
Bye.
you.
Love you.
See you soon.